Hello, everybody. Between the drop in our quorum number and our higher attendance this time, we're actually able to have our meeting today. So thank you guys all for joining us. We're going to call to action the October 21st meeting of the Climate Action Committee. Rebecca, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, just a moment. I see that David has entered the meeting. Let me move him over.
Great.
Okay, and you are now a committee of 13, given the recent correspondence I've received. So I'll just call in order from the list of committee members. Leslie Alden.
Here.
Edward Conti. Blaine Corin. Ann Doherty. She is absent. Meredith Foster.
Here.
Sarah Goody.
Here.
Jean Greenbaum. Michael Harlock. David Johnson.
Here.
Ted McKay. Barbara Rothkrug. Amy Ruiz.
Here.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
And Martin Wall.
Here.
And Vice Mayor Kuhnhart. Oh.
Muted.
He's on the line, but muted.
Let me make non-video participants visible. Okay. Here, but technical difficulties. And Mayor Beckman.
Here.
And I see that Ed Conti has joined the meeting.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hey, Ed. Hey, and there's David. Awesome.
All right.
Great.
I think I'm going to keep my video off because it's too much data usage on my tiny phone. Okay.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. And as is tradition for starting our committee meetings, please join me in a quick salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty, and with that, we're going to move on along our agenda. Item number 2 is open time for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public who are joining our meeting to comment on items that are not on our agenda. Members of the public can raise their hand via Zoom or email public comment at tcmmail.org, and it will be given 3 minutes per person to speak on any items they want that are not on the agenda. We have one intrepid attendee on the line here, so we're going to give them a quick moment to raise their hand if they'd like to. And seeing no hand going up, Rebecca, did we have any emailed public comments?
I am checking right now.
Perfect, thank you.
No email public comments.
Okay, great. Then there are no public comments, so we can close open time and move on to our general business. The first is item 3A, which is approve reorganization and appointment of Sarah Goody as chair and Amy Ruiz as vice chair. Little background here for you guys. It's not normal in Corte Madera for a council member to serve on one of the committees that advises the town council. David and I are both on this committee. I think that was helpful for us both because we're really passionate about these issues and because we wanted to have a hand in getting this committee up and running. I think we're both thrilled with the number of expert and passionate residents who have joined our committee now. So that's fantastic. And with that, I think it's best for me not to be leading this committee. So I have nominated Sarah Goody to lead this committee, and I've nominated Amy Ruiz to be the vice chair of this committee. We can open up the floor for other nominations if anybody would like to make one. If not, we'll take public comment and then we will move to a vote. So I guess first we'll say, would anybody like to make another nomination for either of those positions? I guess we should formality check in with Sarah and Amy and make sure they accept these nominations.
I accept.
Excellent, thank you, Sarah. Amy, you good?
Yep, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there are, oh yeah, Leslie.
Quick question, are you and David going to continue to be liaison for the council to this committee?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Okay, if there are no other nominations, we will open this up to public comment. So our lovely member of the public who's on the line, if you'd like to comment, go ahead and raise your hand via Zoom and we'll get you on here. We'll give you a second there. And seeing no hand going up, we're going to close public comment, bring it back to the committee. Would one of the committee members please make a motion to accept these nominations, and then we'll need a second and then we can vote.
I will so move the nominations.
Thank you, Leslie. Is there a second?
Second.
Perfect. Thank you. Rebecca, could we have a vote, please?
You're on mute.
Oh, I was going back to my list of committee members. Leslie Alden,
Yes.
Edward Conti,
Yes.
Blaine Corin, Ann Doherty, Meredith Foster,
Yes.
Sarah Goody, Jean Greenbaum, Michael Harlock, David Johnson,
Yes.
Ted McKay, Barbara Rothkrug, Amy Ruiz,
Yes.
Martin Wall,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart,
Yes, enthusiastic.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Congratulations, Sarah and Amy. Thank you guys so much for being willing to step up and help us out. I think you guys are going to really help move this committee forward. You've already showed so much, initiative here, so this is fantastic. And with that, Chairwoman Goody, take it away. This is your meeting to run.
Perfect. So excited. That's great. So I guess we'll move on to topic 3B now, the discussion and possible acceptance of the revised climate action plan. So Vice Mayor Kuhnhart, I'll pass it on to you if you want to give a debrief of how that is the latest draft and the approval and recommendation. And if that works out, we can have a discussion and see if we'd like to vote today to forward to council.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I was really pleased to get a lot of suggestions from Martin Wall in June. And I think that there have been a few others. I think Leslie wanted us to do even more major surgery in some ways to make us more like the San Rafael Climate Action Plan, which is really an outstandingly clear one. My feeling is that this one is very good and very, very good, actually. And we have added some scary stuff up front that I think communicates well with the public and frames the depth of the issue. And then the expertise of Christine O'Rourke is still present, and all the data are still present. So this is going to form a background. This is not the end of anything. It's going to form the background of other work that we continue to do. So in that sense, this is not, I think, a critical item for us to labor over excessively. I think it's important for us to be comfortable that this is a sound climate action plan and a basis for communication, but not the end of communication. And with that, I guess I would ask if people have comments and questions.
David, would it be helpful if I shared my screen with your draft, or does everyone have access to it on their computer screen?
I have access to it myself. It's easier to scroll through, but yeah, I mean, if we want to talk about, different sections, if people do have questions, maybe all of us being able to look at it at the same time would be helpful, but.
Okay, I'll be ready to share it.
Okay. So one question for council members. Will we be sort of locked in stone if this is approved as is? Question number one. And question number two, when will it be revised again?
I think is it every 3 years, Rebecca? We have a policy that this comes up for, which is why it's being revised right now. I want to say it's every 2 or 3 years that this comes up for revision.
Well, that sounds correct, but it was just adopted for the first time in 2016.
Well, it wasn't adopted actually in 2016.
Sorry, there was a word. Accepted?
It was prepared in 2016, and we adopted it in December 2018 without any changes. This is the first revision of that. I think, Leslie, that it will live on in the, and I would hope that it would be adopted very quickly by the council. I think that they're going to be more motivated to adopt it quickly if this committee adopts it, much more so. And then we just need to dial back in with, I think Phil Boyle is the person in the lead of, as far as the staff goes, as planning staff, whether 21 or 2022 is the next time when it gets updated.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think that this committee has tons of work to do to sort of prepare the soil, as they say, for the community to get more engaged. And if this is not going to live for 10 years, then, or even 5, then I'm comfortable with it as it is. And I confess that I have not looked at it since midsummer. And I apologize for not being more engaged on that. But that said, you know, we all, I think, want to go bigger, faster, better, harder. And so, you know, we have work to do, I think, to make more significant recommendations going forward. But yeah, I mean, if we can come back to it in 18 months to 2 years, I think that sort of satisfies my concern that it's, you know, checking the box, one and done and move on. So that's my comment.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, Chair Goody came before the council in the spring. Boy, it seems like 5 years ago, but it was the spring of 19, right? And one of her recommendations was that we get together and pass a climate emergency resolution. And to me, that's a even more effective public communication document. And this will be the research that stands behind, and that other action document can refer to this, and others as our subcommittees can refer back to this and the data embedded in this. But I don't think this needs to be perfect. I think it's it needs to be pretty good, and I think it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, and I don't want to hold it up, you know, trying to, you know, making it perfect, because, you know, as we all know, that can really wreck everything. So yeah, I'm fine with it as it is, and I'm a huge supporter of passing a climate emergency resolution. So
is Martin on?
Yes.
Do you have thoughts, sir? Because you contributed quite a few edits, and I'm hoping that we captured those in the present version that was shared around.
Well, I didn't see whether my comment incorporated into the text. I saw that there was comments were in it, and some of them are sort of pedantic and you know, academic in terms of you know, pointing out that California more low fuel standard and for example, would hope that those would be actually written into it. Is if anyone were to, Corte Madera ignored the fact that that we have that the state has a carbon fuel standard and is set for the West Coast and British Columbia, we should have that standard. That's all I'm saying. I agree with Leslie and what else has been said in terms of setting the goals for which we have. That's fine. It was just from an academic and completeness standpoint. So I don't know
I would
what's
say
in the final one.
Oh, well, have you received it as Rebecca sent it around?
I believe
I sent
so.
the one that the version that you sent me to include in the packet had comments in track changes mode with comment bubbles in the margins.
And that's what I see I see the comment bubbles and
yes.
Oh,
so he's correct that they aren't incorporated into the body of the document, but they are in the right-hand margin as comments.
Okay, here's the question,
included.
Martin. And by the way, at this point, would you prefer Martin or Marty?
Martin is fine, thanks.
Martin, would you prefer to be the one to just edit those in to the document?
I could, yeah, I could take that on.
Would you please?
Yeah.
That would be great.
Thank you. One other quick comment, just for thought here, and maybe it could go in the climate emergency resolution. But the state of California has passed some amazing legislation recently and executive orders with respect to climate action in the state of California. I'm not a big fan of our 2030 goals, 40% below 1990 levels. I think that that's kind of, really pissant. But what's been passed recently has been pretty, the executive orders are pretty remarkable. So maybe those, if not worked into the climate action plan, can be incorporated into a version of the climate emergency resolution.
In my mind, we should definitely refer to those within this. Yeah, we should not be less ambitious than the state of California.
Mayor Beckman, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I would just share my support. I fully support adopting this, including with the the edits that have been made. That even if they're not in final form yet, the spirit of the edits that are in the margins. I think we've certainly got enough to send this back to staff and say, look, here's what we added. Here's our thoughts that we added, and we can even send it back to them with direction. Hey, by the way, would you please just bring this thing into compliance, or bring it abreast of like whatever the most recent action from the state is, and that can be kind of our direction as we pass it back to staff. But other than that, I fully support adopting this thing, passing it out of this committee today. I agree that I think this is important. The climate emergency resolution are important, but I think most important is the actual policies that we end up down the road that we draw from this plan, from this menu, and like pass from our committee and recommend to the council. So I think I'm all for getting started on and kind of hitting the ground running there today.
Great. Would anyone else like to comment before we take a vote? Yeah, David Johnson.
So just so I'm understanding this, so what we're, and somebody's probably going to rephrase this back as a motion, but as I'm understanding it, Marty is going to take a look at some of the edits that are still in the margin, but that the substance of what was issued by Rebecca on the 12th as a link is going to be passed to staff, and then staff is going to make it final. And then what happens to make it a document that goes public? And then can somebody confirm how and when it would be edited, if ever?
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe we were on the same understanding and same page up until that point. So council members or Rebecca, would you like to go into that question?
I'm happy to just jump in there, David. So after we adopt this thing today and send it back to staff, they will, as you said, make it final, and then they'll send it to the town council to vote for adoption. And then after that, it's just part of I think it's I want to say a 3-year revision cycle.
3 years seems like a long time.
We could certainly look at bringing that down to 2. I mean,
or 1. I just think that things are going to change so fast. We may want to. I would suggest that we leave the option to update it sooner than 2 years.
And
okay,
that's what I was asking earlier, and my understanding in the feedback that I got was that it could be revised within 18 months. I think I heard 2021, 22, which is why I was comfortable approving it as is. So let's confirm. Let's be clear about that. I think that's an important.
And my only thought was that since staff brought it back and we as a council adopted essentially the earlier version in 2018, December 2018, it would seem to me that 3 years later is the deadline for us to have a more fully updated. This is kind of an interim step. We're adding an additional stop in here, which to try to improve and make more public, more readable the report as we get more serious about the rest of our actions as a database.
Yeah, and one thing that I'd like to just draw attention to is that let's just keep our eye on the fact that this committee could conceivably get bogged down in reviewing the climate action plan every year, and that could be like 3 months of our year spent on that. And that's time that we're not spending actually recommending specific policies to the council, because remember, this thing is full of like 70 something policies. That's a lot for the council to just kind of look at as a mass, and so I think the committee's role, right, is to draw out specific ones from there and be like pushing them to the council saying, hey, you guys do this now. And if like say this committee decides that we want the council to take action on like EV charging stations, and the climate action plan, whenever it was last adopted, says we want 100 EV charging stations in town, we can still as a committee push back to the council and say, hey, we want you to actually do 200 charging stations. So just because we don't have to settle for the goals that are outlined in what might be older versions of the climate action plan. So I'll just point that out, right? What's in the climate action plan does not limit our ability as a committee to push more radical, more progressive actions to the council.
David Johnson, would you like to go?
All I was suggesting is that we retain the ability to edit it earlier, and that it's not seen as the only option to revise it in 3 years, but we would just retain the option or the ability to edit it in 18 months if that makes sense. I agree with what you said, Eli. I'm just trying to retain the option.
If I could, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I like this suggestion, and I think it can be conveyed in the email exchange that we send over to the planning department to ask them to, put final editorial presence to it, and then deliver to the council at the earliest opportunity.
Rebecca, does anyone have any final thoughts or comments? Otherwise, Rebecca, are we good for a vote?
I believe you are good for a vote unless there are any other comments.
I would just add or emphasize some of the comments I've heard before. I think we have to be very careful not to get too caught up in the plan when our role is taking the actions or recommending the actions. And planning can go on forever, and town has invested quite a bit already in a pretty good comprehensive plan. It can always be made better, but I don't see that as the key role of this committee. I see this as the action committee, not the planning committee. And so I just think we should keep that in mind, because we've had 3 meetings now and we keep talking about the plan. That's not how I thought we were, what I thought our charter was. So
good.
Yes. Thank you, Ed. Rebecca, can you do roll call?
We would need to have a motion in a second first.
Okay, allow me to make the motion that the Climate Action Committee is asking the town planning staff to accept the updates and edits that we have rendered to the most recent climate action plan draft, and finalize it and press it to town council at the earliest opportunity. And ask if this can be subject to more frequent or an earlier update than 3 years out.
I will second that motion to adopt this climate action plan with that direction to staff.
I got all of that. Leslie Alden,
Yes.
Edward Conti.
Sorry, I was looking at our email. Yes.
Thank you. Blaine Corin, Ann Doherty, Meredith Foster,
Yes.
Sarah Goody,
Yes.
Jean Greenbaum, Michael Harlock, David Johnson,
Yes.
Ted McKay, Rothkrug, Amy Ruiz,
Yes.
Martin Wall,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kuhnhart,
Yes.
Mayor Beckman.
Yes.
Oh, I apologize. Did we ask for public comment on this item? I believe we did at the beginning, but I don't recall.
Oh, we might not have. Sarah, you might just ask for public comment real fast and see if our attendees put their hand up.
All right, calling for public comment. Anyone who is an attendee, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. Okay.
Okay, I did not receive any emailed public comments. And now we can accept the vote. So thank you for that. And just as a point of order, after the committee asks any questions, the chair just opens it up for public comment before bringing it back for final discussion and a vote. So I'm sorry I didn't remind you about that.
Great. Great. Good to get that out of the way. Let's move on to 3C, which is discussion of subcommittee action item recommendations to forward to town council. So I know we don't have everyone here today, but as far as our subcommittees go, let's just roll down that list, and I'll have one person from each subcommittee, hopefully if a chair has been chosen, that person will speak up. Otherwise, just a general person from that committee to discuss if you have met yet, if you do have a committee chair, and if so, do you have any actions that you would like us to discuss and vote on today to forward to council? And let me just pull that up. Right, first, can we get the transportation committee? So that's Michael, David, Martin, me, and Anne.
Is Ann on?
I don't believe.
And I know I'm sure has been frustrated by my absence in the summertime. And in a place in the woods of New Hampshire, it was difficult to communicate. And I would just say from my perspective, we have not met recently. That we had done quite a bit of paring down and selecting about three or four different top priority actions within the transportation sector list of things. I'm not sure if that list has been shared or made visible to the committee as a whole. And that's what I was hoping Anne would be able to do, because I know she had it. Is there anybody else?
I was just going to say that in the master sheet, there's a transportation tab. I don't know if that information has been dropped into that document.
I do see there is one highlighted action, which is to advocate for direct freeway connector for the 101 North to Richmond Bridge via 580 in San Rafael. However, there is I cannot see if that has been updated since the last meeting of the committee.
Okay, so what we most need to do, I think, is schedule a meeting of the subcommittee and make sure that Anne is involved, and then drill back in and come back, because we did have quite a bit of discussion, got down to 3 or 4 of the highest priority areas of action. We also have a deeply informed advocacy group working on electric vehicles in our county, and a nonprofit that is advancing with several contracts to make them more effective. And they've just launched a new co-buying or a group
Preferred
buying.
pricing. Yeah.
Excuse me?
Pricing. The preferred pricing.
Preferred pricing through Cartelligent. And this is the Drive Clean Bay Area campaign, which is really moving fast at the present time and accomplishing quite a bit. I think it's no accident because we've got our governor out there saying we're going to have, what did he say, 40% of our vehicles by 2030 will be electric one way or another. Is that what he said? This is a very impressive and really striking goal, particularly for a town like Corte Madera, which has so many car dealerships in it. And we need to have a good, solid outreach to them and aid to, let's say, flip them and to be more successful at the sale and leasing of hybrids and all electric plug-ins.
Well, thank you, Vice Mayor. My understanding is that the Transportation Committee, Rebecca will follow up with that document and make it accessible to all, and that there will be an email sent around to reschedule another meeting for the subcommittee. Is that
perfect.
everyone? Right, wonderful. Let's move on to the Energy Subcommittee. So that's Eli, John, David, not sure which David, doesn't say, Barbara, Amy, Martin, and Leslie. Can I get
Amy,
a member?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So we have met a couple of times on the Energy Committee and have reviewed the various recommendations in the action plan and are getting closer. We've prioritized based on impact and duration or how long it might take to get something accomplished. So trying to balance the short wins and the long-term wins with the with impact. What I would say is that we're starting to vote on which actions we want to take priority on, but we don't have every subcommittee member's votes in yet. So we're getting closer. And what I would recommend is that we schedule one more meeting to align on that and then come back around in our next council meeting, and this meeting, and discuss what those recommended actions are. But I offer this up to anybody else on the Energy Subcommittee too, if you think there's a better path forward.
I think that sounds great, Amy. I appreciate the work. You've been a fantastic chair of the Energy Subcommittee, putting together meetings for us, and also setting up this infrastructure in the Google Drive where we could vote on priorities. So thank you, and I think your plan sounds great.
Great.
I agree.
Agreed.
Same here.
Great. Amy, would you like to follow up with the subcommittee and make sure we get those votes in?
Perfect.
Right. Wonderful. Let's move on to the Waste Committee. So that is Eli, Meredith, Jean, Mike, and John.
I'm happy to jump in here. I don't believe that the Waste Committee has met, so that is on all of us. So I think we need to schedule a follow-up meeting here. A lot of good options there that are already in the climate action plan, a lot of good actions listed there. So I don't think we could really go wrong, but I would like to see us have a subcommittee meeting before our next meeting of this full committee, and come back to you at the next meeting with an action that we're ready to vote on as a committee to pass to council.
Would anyone from that committee like to take up starting that process?
This is not helpful, but I will just say I don't feel like I have the bandwidth to chair subcommittees right now. So I think I'm on like 3 subcommittees, and I don't think I can coordinate them.
No worries. I am having similar situations because I am on that subcommittee. Meredith, Jean, Michael, or John, would any of you like to start out that process? If not, I can begin that process and we can establish a chair in the future.
I could help out with that. get a meeting set up.
Perfect. Right. Anyone else from the Waste Committee like to speak up? Otherwise, let's move on to the Water Committee, which is Ed, Jean, Ted, Barbara, and Anne. Not sure the last names.
And I'll just mention that Ann Thomas, the Ann with 2 N's and no E, has dropped out of this committee, so we can update our materials to reflect that. And also, Rebecca, who was the other one?
John.
Okay, thank you. So we can update our documents here to reflect that those two are no longer with us. And Madam Chair, happy to say that for me, same situation. I'm on the Water Committee as well. I don't think that we have had a meeting unless there was one that I was not aware of.
I remember
the Water Committee. What am I?
Yeah. So Eli, I remember one meeting and I don't remember you being on the committee.
You are absolutely right. I'm not on the committee. I was looking at the wrong one on this Drive spreadsheet. My bad.
All good. Ed, would you like to speak regarding the Water Committee?
We had a meeting and we came up with some action items, and I think Jean is the chairperson, and but that's all I have to offer at the moment.
I see that Barbara, Anne, Ted, and Jean are not present at this meeting. So Ed, would you be willing to take up following up with the subcommittee?
Yeah, I won't take on a chair position, but I can follow up to see, try to figure out what our action items were and when we'll have our next meeting. I guess, do we have easy access to a list of the email addresses of the committee members?
I believe we do. It is in the Corte Madera Climate Action Committee, which is a folder in Drive. Rebecca, would you be able to share that out?
Yes, I can share that.
Okay, thank you.
And those, don't worry, Ed, those who are not present can be delegated to.
So be it.
All right. Let's move on to the Nature Committee. That is Eli, Ed, Meredith, me, Jean, Michael, David, and Barbara.
I don't remember any meeting of that committee.
Neither do I. Yes, so would someone from the subcommittee like to follow up with the group? I'm happy to. I will go ahead and do that. And our last subcommittee is implementation. That is Leslie, Meredith, me, David, Ted, Barbara, and Amy. I likewise do not recall a meeting of that group, unfortunately. Would someone like to start up that conversation?
I'm in the same boat as everybody else, I think, right now. It's just bandwidth is an issue. But that said, you're right. That group has not met. I cannot chair, but I can certainly show up and help pull it together. But I don't want to step up as chair. Sorry.
Can I just make a recommendation on this one?
Yeah.
So I think that as we all think about the actions we're going to take on our relative subcommittees, that they'll likely all funnel into implementation. And maybe something we do is, as we come back in the next meeting and we report on our 1 to 2 top priorities or actions, we discuss as a committee how we want to implement and how we want to take that to the public. That way we're all sort of vested in the implementation, and then at that point, we can pick a few members to actually help execute or lead those efforts. That's one idea there.
To add on to that, I think a lot of what I'm hearing across the board is that the bandwidth is just getting too large, and there are so many committees and so many of us are invested in so many. And this may be something we want to consider, is readjusting the format of the committees or readjusting the amount of committees that we're focusing on at a period of time.
I'm actually glad that nothing has happened on this committee, because as I said something like this way back at the beginning of our functioning, that as Amy suggested, it really should be the product of the recommendations of the other committees. It's the place where we take analysis and study and information and turn it towards implementation and action. So it's kind of a different aspect of work of this group as a whole. So I don't think it's a problem that we have not progressed, and I wouldn't put it to sleep, but I would set it aside, Madam Chair, until such time as the committees have come forward with their top recommendations, and then it can coalesce those into an implementation package. What do you think?
I agree personally, and I think that's a good idea to set aside this committee, as it does intersect with the other work that we are doing. Would anyone else like to comment?
I'll just add that I did find the list from the water committee that was circulating. So
Great.
took a little email searching.
And think about who you can delegate to.
I'm in favor of David's suggestion. I think that and Amy's, I think that makes absolute sense. And that's just logic. So good thinking, Amy.
Rebecca, do we need a vote or public comment to disband for right now the subcommittee of implementation?
I don't believe so. I don't think we voted to create the subcommittees to begin with. It was just done by action of the chair and the co-chair.
Okay. Great.
You don't really need a motion to do nothing at present.
Just making sure.
Yeah.
David,
Sarah, as Madam Chair, would it make sense to discuss amongst the group here what the group thinks a reasonable time frame for follow-up is?
yes. In addition to that, I would like to discuss and see if anyone would like to be taken off a subcommittee, or if anything has changed in that span, as I know it has for me. So I would like to follow up and make sure that everyone feels comfortable in their subcommittees. And then second of all, let's, discuss a time frame for when we want follow-ups to be happening. First off, would anyone like to be reorganized in a subcommittee? Yes, Mayor Beckman.
Not a specific request, but I was just thinking that I think, like you said, maybe if we do want to, I don't know, maybe we're not prepared to at this meeting, but if we do want to just kind of reevaluate our whole subcommittee setup, that might be good. I think part of the idea of that was that we had so many folks on the whole committee that it was, it was feeling like that, it made sense to have more subcommittees where people could be doing more work and not all duplicating efforts. Since then, we've had a few people drop off this big committee, and we've also had we've seen just, it's tough to get a full meeting, it's tough to get the entire committee meeting together. So maybe it doesn't make sense to have this many, subcommittees. Maybe the full committee is in fact smaller than it seemed. In which case, maybe there's no need for subcommittees at all, or maybe we just, merge. We have 6 subcommittees. Maybe we merge them into, 3 subcommittees, each overseeing 2 areas. I don't know, whatever the group thinks, but just thought I'd throw that out there.
No, that's a great suggestion. Would anyone else like to add on to what Mayor Beckman was saying? Any other ideas for how to restructure subcommittees? I personally think that since the group has dropped, kind of significantly, that we might want to either kind of stay away from the subcommittee ideas and really focus on a group at working as one, or either pick, 3 to 4, 2 to 3 to 4 subcommittees that we want to focus on, so that we're, not taking on too much and able to really focus on specific actions and implementing those actions as a committee. Would anyone like to comment on that? Yes, Vice Mayor Kuhn.
I think the only one that I'm kind of iffy on is the Nature Committee, although I really think it's kind of critically important, particularly in Marin, where we have so many opportunities for carbon sequestration, tree planting, and you name it, that are natural solutions. I think that will just have to come a little later, but perhaps the implementation committee could be dissolved and just think of that function being the function of all of us acting together as a whole.
Yes, and I agree. And just because we dissolve a committee or a subcommittee doesn't mean that we can't readdress that in the future.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm all for condensing them too. So I think if like we wanted to pick the top 3, but I know that people feel passionately about certain topics, so I wouldn't want to have that not have that opportunity for certain folks. But I do think that if we could pick maybe 3 topics, that might give us a better chance to focus and drive some action.
I'd be in favor, I think, of dissolving the committees, or if not that, then reducing them. I think it kind of dilutes our ability to just make decisions and move on, because the committees have to meet, and then somehow we have to feed information into the whole committee, and then what's the decision-making process exactly? And if the committee is of a manageable size and we can just set priorities, passions can be communicated to the whole committee, and priorities set. And realistically, if this committee is going to succeed, the near-term priorities have to be achievable things. We have to show that we're actually accomplishing something. And so to me, that whatever category it might fit in, we're going to hopefully start with things we can achieve in the relatively near term while we're working on some of the longer term education and longer term goals. So anyway, I think instead of talking about committees, we could just be talking about the items that each committee wants to talk about, all as one group. So anyway, I'm in favor of no committees or fewer committees, whichever the group prefers.
David Jones.
Structurally, one way to do this would be to ask that the subcommittees that have been active bring their comments forward by date certain next meeting, and that with the intention of collapsing it and using time in our next meeting to establish areas of focus or priority as a single group, so we could harvest the work that has been done in a more structured way, or maybe kickstart a conversation.
I like that. Set a deadline.
I agree.
Because it sounds like there has been some good action, some good thinking. It'd be great to harvest that before we go down a different path.
Yeah. Now, I've got a suggestion on the calendar, Madam Chair, which bears on this question of what and how many committees. There's a fairly significant event that's going to happen one day less than 2 weeks from now that will influence how our country moves ahead, and it will influence the way a lot of us are thinking about life. And there will be a refreshing that happens with the national election one way or another. And so then maybe we schedule our next meeting a short time after that event, such that we can begin to be taking into account whether we've got, one great big huge giant job to do or of resistance, or one great big giant job to do of helping a new administration get restarted on climate action. What do you think?
Yes, Mayor Beckman.
I'll just say, David, I like your big picture vision here. I don't know that this particular Corte Madera Climate Action Committee has that much of a role in helping a potential Biden administration. I feel like, my own personal thought is that our actions and our responses to the facts of climate are not going to change regardless of who is elected. We may get more help from the feds if the election goes a certain way, but I think regardless, I don't see the election really having a material impact on the work of this committee, frankly.
Well,
I
I
guess
was
your point, your overall point was about scheduling the next meeting. I think we've run into a little bit of trickiness trying to negotiate that before, and what we came back to not being able to make our quorum last week was maybe we just stick with the third Wednesdays at 4 that we had discussed at our very first meeting. So I guess I'm a little hesitant to like kind of shake that up now, but that's my 2 cents.
All good, all good. But I like David Johnson's suggestion that we sort of set a deadline for ourselves for reporting back. And I think Amy said something similar, maybe it was Leslie too. As the present committees think about what their recommendations are, think about bringing them to the committee of the whole and starting to convert those into our collective move on a variety of fronts by the next meeting.
Amy, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think I'm just, yes, +1 to all of that.
Wonderful. So I think what I'm hearing is that we would like to set a deadline for the committees who have been meeting, which would be, I want to say, Rebecca, energy, not transportation, and water. Is that correct?
What about
Yeah.
waste?
Energy.
I believe so. Waste was going to possibly work on meeting.
Okay, can those 4 subcommittees, let's say by the next meeting, which will be on the 3rd Wednesday of November already, bring those actions forward? And then I think out of an abundance of just time, we should move on to our next agenda.
Can I make one last request before we move on? I guess I would say before our next meeting, if the subcommittees could surface their actions and recommendations so that the this committee can review them ahead of our meeting, that might make for a more productive conversation.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. Now on to 3D, which is a discussion and possible recommendation to Town Council regarding the climate emergency resolution. I know Vice Mayor Kuhnhart, this is kind of, I know you've got all this information, so if you would be up for giving just overview of what that recommendation is and the adoption.
Well, you taught us, you told us. But I would say, 2 years ago, when asked about whether we need a climate emergency resolution, I would have said no. It's a big emergency and people should know that, but not everybody knows it. And you came forward to us and said that we ought to do it, and my ears opened up. I have since listened to some of the folks from Mill Valley, the Mill Valley Climate Action Group, and others who have been, and San Anselmo, who have been working on and passing climate emergency resolutions. I think Nevada has got one. I think that it could be a jump starter. And so I took it upon myself to grab the one that was done by San Anselmo and refresh it for Corte Madera. And I shared that, I think, with Mayor Beckman and Todd Cusmano and Rebecca. Has that gone into anybody else, Rebecca?
Todd, I can answer for Rebecca. Yes, yeah,
I don't think so.
I also sent it to Adam Wolf to review.
That's right.
Because what we're looking at it from staff is, what is a resolution? Is there anything in there that commits staff to specific deadlines or responses? And so he looked at it from that lens, only high level at my request. But I honestly, just reading it for my own edification and what I heard from Adam, I think we're really close. I think, really would like something to come from this committee, and we'll send it to council. Staff is not going to edit it. Yeah. Unless something really jumps out at us.
Okay. So is Adam done, or is the planning staff done, and such that it can be communicated back?
Yeah, I don't, our response back is just what I said. So I think we don't have any edits. There's nothing that concerns us in any way.
Okay.
I can put it on the shared screen if you'd like to review it with everyone right now.
Madam Chair.
Yes, if we could get that screen shared, that'd be great.
By the way, when I mentioned Mill Valley, it's a nonprofit activist group that is pressing this in Mill Valley. The Mill Valley City Council actually declined to consider a climate emergency resolution. They specifically declined to consider one. Anyway, good. I can even read it on my teeny tiny phone.
Okay, that looks good.
Looks wonderful.
I'm sorry, can I ask why that is, why they declined?
I think there are several councils and several council members in Marin who really want to focus on local all the time, particularly when there are big budget problems, and don't want to focus on sort of much bigger, what might be considered to be national and state issues. I don't know to what extent that came into play, but there were also just a couple of members of the Mill Valley Council. One of them works for a major utility, and another of whom is not really focused on climate, who put the brakes on. And Mayor McEntee didn't want to upset the apple cart too much.
Got it, thank you.
Now,
David, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, David.
Can you share a little bit of where this came from? Do you know much about the San Rafael work?
This came from San Anselmo, and yeah, there's a sustainability committee in San Anselmo, and quite a number of activists on that, and the town of San Anselmo passed a resolution very similar to this. It was actually slightly longer than this one, and went back into the UN actions in 2015 and so forth. And I thought that it was not necessary for us to do that, since so much has accelerated in the last couple of years. And so I'm not sure I can describe exactly where San Anselmo got theirs. I think there's several people advancing climate emergency resolutions around Sonoma County and beyond. Leslie has something to say. I can't see anybody, so I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm part of the National Climate Emergency Mobilization Group, part of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Task Force that is really kind of came out of Berkeley, in Berkeley City Council. It is a national movement. It is a statewide movement. The Climate Emergency Mobilization team is all over the Bay Area and up in Sacramento as well, paid staff as well as volunteers. So this is a national movement. I first met the founder of CEM in New York, probably 2016, I think. And it's pretty much gone gangbusters. So this is not something that we're doing all by our lonesome, or just crazy old us here in Marin County. This is something that, and I think Mill Valley will eventually, it's like that you need the trailblazers, the point of the spear to kind of get everyone else lined up behind you. And we're not that, but I think we'll see some of the other towns in Marin County deciding, after they see all the other towns and cities adopting climate emergency mobilization resolutions, that they'll join as well. It'd be great to be unanimous throughout Marin, all 12 jurisdictions. It would be fabulous if the special districts also, you know, pass them. And it's a movement that's building. And we've got 101 cities in the Bay Area. And I think about, I don't know, something like 20 maybe have already signed on. So that's the little bit of background.
Good.
Thank you.
Leslie, I didn't color my question nearly enough.
Uh-oh.
I wasn't questioning how advanced or how much this puts us ahead of things. I was questioning, does it go far enough?
Oh, well, it's just a stake in the ground. It's just, it doesn't do anything. It's got zero teeth.
Yeah.
It's just merely a statement of there's a climate emergency, and it's another lens for council and community to go back to, along with a climate action plan, to say we really believe this is something we need to be working on. So to dismiss it, I think is, you know, when Mill Valley does that, it's fine. It as I think our town manager Todd Cusmano said, you know, it's not requiring anything of anyone. It's really just putting a stake in the ground.
Can we see the second page, Rebecca? Can you dial up? Now, there are the resolves. So this is what we're, to the extent this has teeth, this is where the teeth are.
Mayor Beckman, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I just wanted to say, especially in light of Leslie's excellent comments, I think for me, Leslie really kind of crystallized like why I think this is something that we should do and do right now, and also not spend all that much time on, because you know it's like a recognition of the facts almost, right? It's just when there's an emergency, you recognize it. That's something that you do. That's a given. And so, but I feel like, you know, given that this isn't where our actions stem from. Our actions stem from us kind of drawing, you know, specific actions from the climate action plan out of that plan and pushing them to council. So I think, like, you know, this, I almost feel like this is fantastic. Thank you, David. I'd be ready to pass this thing on today. I just feel like this is something that we could really easily slam dunk, get it moving, and then continue with our, you know, our more kind of impactful work.
Can I just call attention to one thing in here that is a little bit new, and some of you may know the council member Alexis Feynman from San Anselmo, and I think that the second, be it further resolved, I'm sorry, there's now therefore be it resolved, then the next one is the long one is be it further resolved, the town affirms the need for understanding, participation, collaboration. This paragraph essentially says, instead of just considering environmental impacts and fiscal impacts, wait a minute, that we also consider climate impacts whenever we're taking new actions. If we're going to build something, if we're going to change policy on something, California law requires us to look at it's actually the next paragraph. Look at CEQA, and we have to say something that this is either consistent with or inconsistent with the Environmental Quality Act, and we have to say whether or not any particular ordinance or action of the council will cost money. Is it consistent with the budget? And this will require staff to say what the climate impacts are. Think about it. So that's a particular new push.
Would anyone like to make remarks regarding that comment or regarding the way in which it would impact council?
Well, is staff equipped to do that, or is that adding a whole another layer of third-party study that would have to be done? That's not necessarily bad, but it seems like that's an important consideration, because to do a cradle to grave climate analysis is not a trivial task.
Yeah.
You did sneak that in there, David.
Well,
Yeah, and I think, you know, this is Todd. I think that's where Adam, our planning director, that's where that would cause him some consternation. So,
A little heartburn.
you know, you know, if this group is comfortable, I mean, if it's a great question, if you feel strongly, I mean, I think you should, you know, put whatever you want in this, and I'm happy to take the next step with staff to find a way within reason. Again, we're not, you know, in this resolution, we're not about to spend, you know, $30,000 to have a consultant or someone come in and do an analysis for us, right? That's just not where we're going to spend our time in Corte Madera. We're going to put our money and time to good use to have some wins in this realm. So, but again, you're not going to get any pushback from me today. If this is something the group feels strongly about, then I'll try to find a way. But again, at the end of the day, that's where I'll land with the mayor and the vice mayor.
Fair enough.
So I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know what kind of weight resolutions like this carry, but is there any risk to being challenged for having not done a proper climate analysis if this resolution says we're directed to do it?
I don't think
'Cause I agree with you. It's not realistic that you're going to do the kind of study that I think CEQA would require.
it's not binding as a resolution, is it? It's not like an ordinance.
Well, it says the word direct.
Ordinances are the legally binding laws of the city.
So it's not an ordinance?
It's not an
A
ordinance, it's a
resolution is not an
resolution.
ordinance, but yeah.
A resolution is a statement.
Right.
And having statements like town council directs the town manager, that's not binding either?
To work with staff to include consideration and prioritization of consistency with the climate action plan. So let's say there's a new hotel proposal, and the hotel proposal will have to have environmental impacts evaluated, and the hotel developer will have to pay for that. And if town staff begin to think about, well, what are the climate impacts? Are there any specific climate impacts of this hotel? Is it a major generator of greenhouse gases? Is it going to help because they're planting 100 trees on that site as well? I think it directs people to think about what is the consistency with goals under the climate action plan.
Yeah, so I should say, I like the idea as long as it doesn't send us down a rabbit hole somehow. But if it doesn't, then I like the idea.
All right, I'm just looking for any last comment.
It's Todd again. I think it's good to understand your intent, and if the group again feels strongly, we can always words matter, but we can always play with words to meet the intent. As the town manager, I always appreciate knowing what, you know, when the council gives me direction or the intent of that direction is actually, I take it as being really helpful for me and staff, because we know we have to figure out a way or try to find a way. I don't lose any sleep over the wording, but I appreciate the conversation. And when we may, again, we'll probably work through the mayor and vice mayor on this. But it's fine the way it is from my perspective. If you're asking staff, we may play with words a little bit though, just to make sure, like to the conversation, that we don't get locked into something we can't deliver.
So then my understanding is that today we are ready to vote to send this document and this resolution to council. Is that everyone else's understanding? And yes, okay. I will open for public comment. Oh, looks like our one attendee is not here anymore. With that, can I get a second?
Before we take a motion, can I, it's the first time I've seen it. I'm not against it. I just think it's a little odd to do a screen read of part of the document and take a motion to agree to the wording. So I'd have to vote negatively because I simply haven't had a chance to read the document myself.
I think that's fair. That sounds fair to me.
We can take a brief moment to allow everyone an opportunity to read through it and see if they have any thoughts on it.
For some reason,
I'll go ahead and second it if just to be on the record seconding it.
For some reason, the screen is now showing a Fairfax resolution.
Oh, sorry, I am on.
Also,
I
while
was
that's
in
coming
the
back up,
packet. Right.
Sarah, could I make a comment real fast?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of help clarify and maybe get one more time just staff perspective for when it comes to the part of this resolution where we're looking at assessing in staff reports, what the impact of the actions that are being proposed are. I totally agree that like it's silly and unrealistic to think that we'd be getting a consultant to figure out like oh, that's going to ultimately lifetime cause like 253.8 tons of carbon. I think more realistic might just be kind of a broad level, just like I think probably our staff is more than equipped to just kind of common sense look at an item that they're proposing, and in the environmental impact section that's already in our staff reports, just say, hey, look, either this is likely to like increase carbon sequestration because there's a net increase in trees if we approve this item or whatever. So I'm curious to get staff's perspective on whether that's like a viable direction a viable way to interpret that.
Yeah.
Is that better, Todd? Is that kind of like the direction that we're going, or?
Yeah. Yes. I think your analysis is right, is accurate.
Okay. Thank you.
At the same time, if this is literally the first time that folks have seen it, I feel uncomfortable about asking people to accept something. I wouldn't accept it. I have, because I edited it, I've seen it, so I am comfortable myself, but I would be uncomfortable if this were the first time that I had seen it.
Can we take this up at the next meeting? Can we distribute it and let everyone read it and then vote on it in the next meeting?
Yes, it does need to be cleaned up a little. There were some whereases, as you can see down here at the end, that I wasn't sure if they belonged elsewhere in.
The two on the last page were two that had been in the San Anselmo version, and I pulled them down there because I thought they're dated, and B, they're not particularly lively and needed given the severity of current understanding that we do cover up higher. So I would just delete those. I didn't want to lose the thinking entirely, but I would be perfectly comfortable deleting that sort of remnant last page with two additional whereases. You can see they go back to 2015.
I'm so excited to be here tonight, and I'm so sad that I haven't been able to attend one of these meetings, and my schedule just doesn't help. But as a process piece, has this group been comfortable working together in Google Docs to comment on things like this, or is there a way? How has this group been reviewing documents like this together?
Amy's an expert at Google Docs.
So I think I'm happy to chime in, but somebody else jump in too. Is the doc that we've reviewed together is the action plan, and it was in PDF. So we haven't been using docs as an entire group, with the exception of some of the things that Rebecca has used to organize us with respect to contact information. But in evaluating the various actions that the subgroups could take, we've started porting that into docs. But outside of that, I don't think we have been. Does anybody else want to comment on that?
I think we could on this.
Yeah, I would love to moving forward. It's easier where we can.
I would just move that I'd suggest that we, if we have a process where we take an edit from Rebecca and David, post it on Google Docs, and allow us to read it and comment together before we meet again, it might be the best use of our time.
I agree. Is anyone opposed to directing this for our next meeting?
Nope.
Okay, great. And then Rebecca and David, is that okay to add that comment feature and that through Google Docs for our next meeting?
Absolutely, as far as I'm concerned.
Great. Right, then we will move on to our next item, which is confirming our next meeting and adjourn. It's my understanding that we decided at our last meeting where we didn't have a quorum to meet on the third Wednesday of every month. And we decided for 4 p.m. this time because I wouldn't be able to make a later day. Rebecca, can you confirm, did we decide on 5:30 going forward?
I actually don't recall. And it wasn't recorded because we weren't officially meeting. I thought it was 5 p.m., but maybe someone else in the group has a different recollection.
I
I
think it was.
have it in my calendar as 4 p.m. on the 18th of November. That's what I have entered from Rebecca.
Well, at the meeting where we were trying to get a quorum, people had discussed that it was difficult to make a meeting that started before 5. And
Yeah, I'm gonna look really
the
quick.
committee had originally discussed was meeting on the third Wednesday at 5.
That's fine with me. 5 is okay.
The discussion I remember from the meeting with no quorum was to go back to whatever we decided before, the date and time, third Wednesday at, what was the earlier decision when we first set the schedule? Was that, what time was the meeting originally set for?
It was going to be 5 p.m.
So anyway, my recollection of the last call where we did not have a quorum was just to go back to what the whole group had decided at that time.
Yeah, I remember that too. I just want to make sure that whatever we decide works for our chair.
Yes, that works for me. Is anyone opposed to that meeting date on the third Wednesday of the month at 5 p.m.? All right, great. Well, I believe that is our agenda. Thank you everyone so much for your time and for your discussion. It's been great seeing all your faces, even though it's virtually. And I'm so excited for our next meeting and to continue taking actions and to hopefully really start doing stuff and really start putting, things into place and making these, these dreams, these ideas come to life.
Outstanding job, Sarah.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Good job.
Ciao.
All right, everybody, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.